I think we're ready. So thank you again, everyone, for registering and for attending this course design masterclass series, session 2, online course design elements, practices, and strategies. And this session would not happen without a collaboration effort between GSA, or Graduate Student Assembly, and also Division of Design and Development, as well as Division of Distance Learning. And especially Kiran Budhrani, our organizer, and also the past presidents of GSA, initiated this event so that we all can learn about course design from the expert. And we would like to thank D&D and DDL divisions, especially Dr. Jill Stefaniak, a former president of D&D, and also Dr. Rebecca Rees, a former president of D&D, for their support. All right, so for today's session, we have two amazing experts, Dr. Florence Martin and Dr. Doris Bolliger, whom we can't thank you enough for willing to share their expertise today. So let me talk a little bit about Dr. Florence Martin. Dr. Florence Martin is a professor in learning, design, and technology at University of North Carolina, Charlotte, or UNCC. She served as a program director of the postmaster certificate at the UNCC over there. She received her doctorate and master degrees in educational technology from Arizona State University. And Dr. Martin also has strong expertise in instructional design. She has worked on instructional design projects for several universities, community college, and companies like Intel and Cisco. She also teaches courses on instructional system technology 100% online and has received quality matter certification for 6 of her courses. Her research interests focus on creating transformative learning experiences through effective design and integration of digital teaching and learning innovations. She also has researched on the design of the online learning environment, and then also on cybersecurity and computer science education, as well as competency for learning and development professionals to provide equitable learning opportunities. And we also have Dr. Doris Bolliger here who will share her expertise as well. Just a little bit about Dr. Bolliger. Dr. Doris Bolliger is a contributing faculty member at Walden University. She received her doctorate degree from the University of West Florida. She also teaches online courses related to instructional design and technology topics. Her primary research interests are faculty and student satisfaction, communication, community, engagement, and interaction in the online environment. Her secondary research interests also include the utilization of mobile technologies in informal learning environments. Without further ado, please welcome our amazing speakers, Dr. Martin and Dr. Bolliger. Let's hear it from them.
Thank you, Pauline. Thank you for the introductions. We are glad and to be here, and thank you for the for the joint initiative between the different divisions. I think this is a very important topic. So when Kiran sent me an email, Doris and I were already doing some work on this topic. So we thought it was timely, to share the little bit of work that we've been doing on this area. So actually, you can see that it's titled Unpacking Online Course Design Elements, Practices and Strategies. So that's exactly what we'll be doing. And here is a quick look at the agenda. We already spent some time on introductions. I mean, they introduced us. We'll also spend a little bit of time getting to know you all. And then we'll talk about the importance of design in online learning. And then we'll look at standards in rubrics and online course design. So OCDE, I know the abbreviation is kind of, yeah, funny, but so that's what we call our online course design elements as. So Doris and I created a rubric. So we're going to go through some of the items in that, and which can be used to guide online course design. And then we'll talk through several of those categories in that rubric. And then we'll spend some time talking about instructor preparation and support for online course design, and wrap it up with recommendations. Okay, so that is what we're going to be doing in the next hour or so. So before we get into the content, we have a poll for you guys. So if you can take the time to quickly respond, we'd like to know your role as well as the context you work. Okay, 79% of you have voted, 82%. Okay, I think we can close the poll maybe. Yeah, 91%. Okay, so in the audience, we have about 44%. So about half of you are instructional designers, 44%, 38% educators, 19% said other. And maybe students are there too, maybe. And then where you work, we have 81% in higher education. So it kind of helps us to know who's in the audience. And so this is very helpful. Some of you still represent K-12 industry and other settings. So thank you for, responding to that poll. We hope what we share today will benefit you in your role as well as in your context. So I went through the agenda, but here are the goals directly, aligned to the agenda. We're going to describe the importance of design in online learning, describe standards and rubrics for online course design, describe the online course design elements, describe how instructors can be prepared and supported in online course design. And we're also going to describe the role of instructional designers in online course design. And finally, provide recommendations for instructors and designers and future research. So what we're going to do is we've chunked this into 10 different sections. These are very brief sections, and then Doris and I are going to alternate. So I'm going to do all the odd section, 1, 3, 5, 7, and 9, and Doris is going to do the 2, 4, 6, 8, and 10. We thought, since for us, it's easier for us to go back and forth, and then also you'll know what to expect, who's going to do what. So we want to start off with the importance of design, right? Even knowing that this session is scheduled today means something must be important about design, right? That's why we are all here. So here are a few points that I brought, which again, I don't have to reiterate it. A lot of you, half of you are instructional designers. You have the designer in your title probably. So design is even more critical in online learning, right? That's something I'd like to say. If it is critical for face-to-face and blended, it's even more critical for online learning. The needs of online learners are different from on-campus learners. Instructors are not able to just on the go make changes. So everything has to be thought ahead and very well planned. And so design plays a very crucial role. So the other thing is dropout rate is very high in online courses that are not well designed, because in a face-to-face class, it's easier to engage the student compared to like an online class. So in an online class, even more thinking has to go in to design so that you can, the retention rate can be increased and dropout rate can be decreased. So that's another reason why design is critical in online learning. And course design, it restructures the learning experience clearly and engages the learner. So that's the reason, right? Again, the design in online courses are very, very important, because when a course is well designed, they have an entirely different learning experience. compared to courses that are not as well designed. And the same way with engagement. And, sad to see, for every few courses that are very well designed, there are so many courses that are not well designed, because they're not aware that, there is a systematic process to instructional design, or how to make this more effective, or there are folks who can support to collaborate and to create these courses. So I just brought one reference. So this is from a prior study that I did. Kiran was with me on this study. We interviewed 8 award-winning online instructors, and interestingly, these instructors were not all from education. I think we had one instructor from education. So they were all from different disciplines, and design came out as a very strong component of why they won those awards for online teaching. So some of the things that they mentioned was they used a systematic approach to design their courses, even without being trained, in a systematic design process. They talked about alignment of learning outcomes with content, and chunking of course content, and consistent course navigation. So these are all just some important aspects of design, which we heard from these award-winning online instructors. So we drew this framework. Actually, Albert drew this framework, who also was on the study. So Albert Ritsoft and Swapna Kumar, who are both at University of Florida, were part of the study. So we came up with this framework where effective online courses has 3 important elements: design, facilitation, and assessment and evaluation. So we do a lot of thinking ahead, right? All that falls under design. But even for facilitation and assessment and evaluation, even though they are separate aspects, there is still a design element that goes into those 2 phases before, right? So if you see those intersection, you have to design how things can be facilitated, or design for assessment and evaluation. So design is definitely a very critical approach aspect of online learning. So there are 3 types of online approaches, I should say, probably not called, or 3 types of courses that institutions offer. Asynchronous, where there's no real-time communication. So that has an entirely different type of design, right? So a lot of what we talk through today might have asynchronous elements, and then you have synchronous, which is in real time. So you're logged in at the same time. What type of design can go in? So that's another thing that you could think through. I don't know if we're going to spend a whole lot of time on that. And then biochronous online learning. If you have not heard the term yet, I think it is time that you hear about it, right? Because we wrote a piece on this. So what is biochronous online learning means is we're proposing that is a blending of async and sync. So, there's so much of research separating and looking at async and sync and comparing, but then we still need a lot more research talk about the blend of both these. Because truly, can you do sync without async? Maybe there are folks trying to do that, but then, it's a lot of wasted opportunity, because there's so much of async you can do along with your sync design, right? So that is why we kind of propose that. So the blending of both, but then there are truly async courses, but then we've clearly seen that even 1 or 2 sync sessions can really add value. So that is what that is. So I am going to hand it over to Doris now, who's going to talk about standards and rubrics.
Welcome again, everyone, and thank you for the wonderful introductions, and thank you for joining us today. Some of the rubrics that are out there have been created by organizations or by universities and colleges or partnerships. When you look here on the first 2 that are listed here, we are probably all familiar with Blackboard and Quality Matters. There is a course program rubric, and Quality Matters, that is typically a for-fee based rubric. So you have to have a subscription in order to be able to use it. But the others are openly available here on the screen. You see here the California Community Colleges and Illinois Network. So we have partnerships that have created them. And then also California State. And so these are created by partnerships, universities, colleges, and what have you. When you look at them, you can see here the number of the standards. They go anywhere from 25 to 64 standards. And some of these rubrics are very specific to course design, and some of them are very broad. Like the last 3 here on the on the table here, they are outside of the United States, and they have more of a broader focus. Some of them include strategic planning, so preparation for the entire university or entire university system, being ready and able to go forth and offer online courses or online programs. When you look at them, they have various numbers of elements and specific items for course design. For example, the European one or the non-US ones, they typically have a lot of elements like the Asian Association has 10 different elements and they relate to preparation as well. But they typically have across the board, when you look at them, when you look at design, they have learning objectives, consistency, like Florence already mentioned, different, offering different types of media and offering support to both faculty, instructors, and students. They talk about pedagogy, educational research, so practices that are grounded in educational research, because we just can't make things up. Well, we could, but it's more valuable when it comes out from research. They talk about design, interaction, assessment. They talk about interaction and instructional design as a whole. So the Blackboard and the California and Illinois online network, they are very specific to design, whereas some of them, like I said, might be, more of a broader overview for all of the different things tying into strategic plan of university or university systems or partnerships and what have you. All of these rubrics I want to mention are design. What is their purpose? Well, their purpose really is to ensure quality, to create, standards by which we can then measure quality. They talk, quality assurance. They provide us with frameworks, key performance indicators. So all of these different things that once you start looking at these, that's what they typically talk about. And have any of you used any of these rubrics? Are some more valuable than the others? If you want to pop in the chat and share with us, we would greatly appreciate it. We have a lot of instructional designers out there. I'm pretty sure you have probably heard of some of them, if not all of them.
We see several mentions of QM among the different items listed.
Okay. Yeah, I see here the comment that it's not cost effective. That's why I mentioned that all of the other ones, they are available open source. We included the link in the references, so you can have a look at them. They should take you directly to the rubric or standard or framework forms. Some of them are quite lengthy, some of them are quick and short, which is excellent for when you don't have a whole lot of experience in designing courses. It's just a quick aid, so to speak. But none of these really have been scrutinized or validated with in educational research context, and that's why with Dr. Martin we looked at creating the OCDE. I always laugh at the acronym as well. It's kind of cute. But and with that, thank you for responding. With that, I'm handing it back to Dr. Florence.
Thank you, Doris. So good to see that several of you were familiar with, a number of rubrics out there. So why on earth did we even spend time creating another one, right? And we don't have anything against them. They're all great. They've been created for a purpose, right? Some are at the state level, some are LMS specific. QM definitely serves a broader purpose, but QM comes with a cost. And there's some research on QM too, but QM doesn't like publishing their items even in research. So there are some limitations, and globally, think about it, there are people who need access to some of these resources. The other challenge, and I have, so Pauline introduced me, when she introduced me, she said, I have 6 QM certified courses. I actually have 7 as of yesterday. So, I do know about the QM process pretty well, and I've also have earned program certifications from QM, so I really value it. But when I was asked to create evaluation rubrics for my college, the faculty clearly said, oh, QM is too hard. We can't do it. That's what they said. So we had to like simplify it. Literally, for someone who's really new, we had to simplify it. So again, so we talked about creating an instrument that can also be validated, published freely, anybody to take it and use it, extend the research, extend the teaching, extend the training, whatever you want with it. So that is the reason we created this. So mostly from an intention for research, and so that folks across the world can use it. So I should have put the references on the slide, which I didn't, but it's at the very end. We have to first say thanks to this team from Boise State, actually, Sally, Baldwin, and Yuhi. They had worked on, I think it was a Tech Trends article where they compared 6 instruments and found common categories. And then what we did was we built on that. So we kind of took where they stopped and then began our work, and then we brought in items and we added additional ones that we thought were important. So this resulted from the initial work, what they did, and looking at 6 instruments. Right? So do you see that? So this was not an entirely new approach, creating something on our own. It builds on current existing work. So there are 2 articles. One article is already published. So if you want to read more about it or go look at the instrument, this came out, I think, in the last issue of iROTL, the International Review of Research of Open and Distributed Learning. So it's freely available. That's the other thing we like about it. It's an open access journal. And there is a second article which should soon be coming, which several of you might be interested, because what we did was, it's going to be coming in distance education. We used the same rubric, and we compared the perception of online instructors and instructional designers. So asking them the same question, so to see if they all agree on these same items. So that I'm thinking it should be out in the next issue. So keep an eye on that in case if you're interested to see. We found a couple of, not too many differences, but we did find at least 2-3 differences from the ratings of the instructors and the instructional designers. So I'm going to get us started with overview. So now that I've told you about OCDE, and then Doris and I again will alternate the 5 sections. So that's what we're going to do next. So before we get into overview, we have a poll for you. So this poll has the items in the rubric, but we want you to look at it, and it's a multiple, like a select option. You can select more than one. And if you can respond that which of these design elements were used in the online courses you have designed, or that you've encountered, you've taught, or you've taken, whatever angle you want to say. So it's more of scale of frequency. Okay, about half of you have voted. Keep working on it. I know it's a lot of items. It's 10 items to read, right? So in case you're not familiar with any of them, we'll talk through it. We wanted to do the poll before we talk. Okay, 85% has voted. Should we stop there? Okay. So let's discuss some of these results. You all can see. That's interesting. So course goals, 94% said that they've seen it, right? Course goals definitely seen. Instructors' contact information is in the 80s, 89. Then expectation of communication, which is very important, 86. Another one is instructors' availability for office hours is rated high. Let's look at the low ones. Instructors' turnaround time on feedback to submit assignments, 46. Yeah, initially, if you look at that, it might look like, maybe it's not as important. My instructor will give me feedback, but then as an online student, when you're separated away from the instructor, it's helpful because you can't really ask, right? And including that in the syllabus is very helpful. Then the student exactly know when they'll get feedback. And the other thing I've also realized is when you put it on as an instructor, it holds you accountable. So like, whether it's emails in 2 days or assignments, turning it back in a week, 2 weeks, I think it's very, very helpful because as an online instructor, there's a lot more grading because discussions are also online. They all have to be graded. So if you don't grade it promptly, it's going to fall on you. Like, they're just going to pile up. You can't just wait till the end of the semester to do it, right? So I think that was the lowest at 46%. What else did we see low? There are a couple of 60s, biography of the instructor and actually turnaround time on feedback to assignments was 46, but to email was 60. We had 2 separate items on that. So still both were low. The other 60 was bio. I'm surprised, I think as an online instructor, it's important for the students to know who the instructor is, right? Maybe if you have synchronous sessions, the students can get to know you. Otherwise, if it's primarily asynchronous, you definitely want to have a lot of information. One thing I hear from the students is we'll talk later to Doris will talk about presenting the content, and if you do recordings, instructor recordings, my students like to see my little video as a thumbnail on the end, because then they know who the instructor is. So that's a quick look. So we have the range from 46% to 94%, which shows that we're still not there at 100%. So there is definitely room, for all of us to work towards, or for those who we work with to work towards, right? To reach 100%. And these are all simple things to do. A lot of times we might think it's too simple, but it still adds value. So I'm going to close that out. Okay, so here are the 11 items. Actually, I think Kiran was able to include 10, right, Kiran? And so student orientation is the first one, definitely important. And I think you all saw that it was used in quite a number of courses. So orientation, I've seen faculty create just text-based instructions on a page. I like to do a recording, and then do a video, walk them, do a demo of the course. So everybody does it differently. So definitely taking the time to do a course orientation is very important, because like if you're teaching face-to-face, or if you're designing for a face-to-face course, a lot of this can be covered when on the first day of class. But in an online class, you have to really think through. So the overview module in itself has to be created and students have to go through. So a strategy I use is I have a week 0 module. Actually, let me show you the next slide and then I'll come back to the slide. So I have a week 0 module, calling it as getting started. So I spent an entire week, because first week, there's a lot of add and drop registrations too. I don't get into the content. So giving students the time to just get into the course takes a little bit of time. So spending an entire week has actually been beneficial. I'm going to go back here. So student orientation, course goals was rated pretty high. So I think we all agree that it is very important. Expectations on students' communication was high too. In an online platform, this is even more important, because sometimes, students might think being online is different. We're disconnected from each other. We can say what we want, but we still have to follow etiquette, right? Principles of being polite and courteous and how to respond. And so that's very important. And then expectations of student participation is important too, because, a lot of times there might be some really quiet students. And interestingly, we've also seen that students who don't talk much in a face-to-face class can talk a lot more in an online class. But then on the other hand, there will still be students who may not participate as actively. So having those expectations are very important. Quality of student assignments, giving examples has been helpful. If I've taught a course a previous time, I like to share prior projects after getting permission from students. Students have always appreciated that. Contact information, I actually give them an order of priority how to contact me. I have something called as a contact instructor forum. That's the first thing they should contact me. Now I saw that Canvas is now built in. For those of you who are on Canvas, we have a Q&A forum by default. So students can post a question and everybody can see it. So that's what the contact instructor forum is. But then after that, that is only if it's a question that's public in nature. But if it's personal to you, then, I think email is the next option. And then I think I tell them you can schedule time to virtually meet with me. Then I tell them you can call me. And then, or if they want to meet with me in person, if they are around, so I give them the order of preference. So all that is helpful. So they know that as a learner, they know that, oh, this person is available, will take the time to meet with me. So office hours, not that too many of them show up, especially in graduate school, right? They're all busy. But still giving them that availability for office hours is important in case they want to take the time to talk to you. An instructor bio, right? Very important, because students want to know who the instructor is, and you want this right on the first page, or I think I have it on the link on the first page, but then I have it right there again on the getting started module so that they can connect with you. So sometimes I even do, I make students introduce using a voice thread introduction, like audio visual, or a different type of audio visual technology. So I will take the time to do that too, because then they know that, okay, this person is real, and I try to answer the same questions I ask them to answer. So that helps. And then we also talked about the response time and turnaround time, which is important. I already mentioned that. And policies. You have all these policies for online learning, which has to be included. Very important, even though, sometimes it might look like, oh my God, this is a lot of text, but it's still important. And then you want to remind students to look at it. I give students a getting started quiz. So that knowing that they have looked at the syllabus. So here's the quick look at the week 0. So what I showed you was a rubric, but this is my course, from an old course that I've taught. Course orientation, about the instructor, syllabus, schedule, projects. So, all these are part of the syllabus, but then I put them separately because I want them to easily access that. Grading and feedback, a course map, which shows the alignment. And then student resources. So this has a lot of links to different things they need, which will come later again in learner support, and then the projects that coming. So these are all the things they review, and then what are they completing? So that's the getting started quiz I mentioned, the discussion. And then I also make them sign up to facilitate, and then there's an online readiness survey I make them complete. So these are all different things that they do in a getting started module. So having that overview, or getting started module is very important. I'm going to turn it over to Doris now for content presentation.
Okay, I managed to unmute myself. Content presentation, very, very important. As you probably all know, that's the meat and potatoes of the course. It is about basically, what are students going to do? What are they going to learn, and all of that. So like for every section, we have a little poll. So if you could go in and let us know what you have encountered or what you have used when you teach or designed online courses. And we'll give it a couple minutes. If you could just jump in there and let us know. Still waiting on a few more. Thank you for all of those who have gone and submitted. All right, 92% of you have gone in and submitted their answers. So thank you for that. 39 now, but let's start talking a little bit about this year. Well, and once again, I usually like looking at, you know, the high and the low percentages, but these are all pretty high, with the exception of number 14. We can see here 62% have transcripts for closed captioning, which is very important. We want to make sure we want to be inclusive. We want our materials to be accessible, because I can imagine, you know, having been a student for a very long time, if you cannot get to the content, you feel extremely frustrated and excluded and unhappy. And that typically influences faculty satisfaction, which I have done a lot of research on in terms of faculty and both student satisfaction in online environments. We want the students to be successful. We want them to be persist. And we want them to be at least somewhat satisfied with the course and the instructor and the platforms and everything else that we are using. So the accommodations is very important. And not only is it very important, it's a standard, it's a law. We have to comply, or we can possibly get fined, or our institutions that we are working for. But I see here that the variety of instructional materials. I recall taking an online class first time in 2000. A lot of it was text-based. A lot of it was readings, it was articles, textbooks, and things like that. There was little interaction. There was some, and Dr. Florence will talk about interaction and all of that, which is important. But we have all these wonderful tools now. Some of them are free of charge. Some of them we have to pay for, or we can, as we will be talking in the faculty support later on, our institutions provide them to us. And so it is sometimes nice to see the instructor. It's not just an animated person at the end of the computer. There is a real life person. And the more the longer I have been in education and in industry, is I see or have seen the value of forming relationships and all of that. Learning is a very individualized thing. It's a very emotional driven activity. And so we want to make sure that there is instructor presence, that students don't hesitate to ask us any questions because we are mean or intimidating. That's the last thing we want to be. So that is an excellent source here. Course information, typically I've seen all of the, I've worked at 5 different institutions, and typically we use units or modules based on either topic or weeks. That's probably the one that I'm most familiar with, or that makes the most sense to me as both a student and instructor. Clearly written instructions, that is came in at 82%. I remember when I first started or teach a course for the first time, there are some questions I cannot possibly conceivably think of every questions students may have, or I try to be as clear and straightforward as possible, but every time I teach the course again, I add either some new media, because it can be overwhelming for a new instructor. And so I add new media, or I add something to my Q&A or something like that, or I make sure that the next time I teach the class, I go in and add more information based on what the student or students have asked me. Let's see, course activities that promote achievement. Most certainly, it has to be aligned. Dr. Florence spoke about the alignment, and we will talk about it in assessment too. If I have meaningful activities, the students can relate, the students are hopefully engaged and motivated, versus I'm providing busy work. I've seen that both as an instructor and student, both. Again, I mean, when you first start, there's a lot of things to learn. And that's why instructional designers are really helpful. And we get to that a little bit here later on. Course objectives, they need to be measurable. Often I see course objectives that say something like, the student becomes familiar with XYZ. Well, what does that mean? So, okay, let's go and look at all of the items on the content presentation slide. Thank you for everyone who has answered our questions. Go ahead and close that out. So you can see here, these are the things that I have talked about already. I think probably the most important thing at all is course objectives. Students need to know how to perform. If I don't tell them what I expect as an instructor, it's really hard to actually do the things that the instructor asks students to do. Pretty clear, straightforward, but are there any questions about content presentations or any comments that the audience have? I mean, we have a Q&A session at the end, but sometimes I like to make sure everybody is still happy with or doesn't have any immediate question, because sometimes we hold questions and at the end I get to presentations and I completely forgot what I wanted to ask. So no, okay, then I will turn it over to Dr. Florence.
Thank you. Okay, we're going to talk about interaction and communication. Again, we could do a whole session on interaction and communication, right? We know it's important, but we're going to talk about it through the lens of design today. So let us start with the poll. So it's 75% now. Okay. Thank you, Kiran. So among those of you who responded, you can see that's how the results look. So the highest were student-to-student interaction and technology to promote learner engagement. So this actually has both kind of strategies as well as a couple of items on technology. The last two had technology in there. We also included one on collaborative activities and activities that are used to build community. So some of these, could overlap when you say student-to-student interaction, and then there's also some collaborative activities, a community, but then we looked at it through from different lenses. So let us, so overall, if you look, the least is the one that has 62%, the one at the very bottom, technologies that facilitate active learning. like for example, student created artifacts. In a lot of cases, activities and assessments are still very traditional, right? I think for us in instructional technology, maybe we do a lot of project based, and where students are involved in building. I actually get asked whenever I do workshops, they ask, I mean, how can we stop students from like cheating or copying, plagiarism? I'm like, so easiest thing is having them work on different projects where they are really engaged, actively involved, and so it's not quite happening in all contexts. So in a lot of contexts it's still being very traditional. So that's the one that was definitely the lowest, but we saw some at 79, 82 and 79. So there is still a lot more room where we could, and it's hard. Collaboration is hard online, we know that, right? Especially when you don't see the students, and if it's all undergrads, that is a whole another discussion, versus grads. So it is hard, but I think it's still important. So you see, I think the highest was 94 was the student to student, and then technology to promote learner engagement. So let me close this. So one thing I wanted to point out, if you're wondering what on earth these numbers mean, so these are the numbers directly from the instrument. It actually has one item missing between each of the categories because we also had an open-ended item. So if you were adopting the instrument, we thought the open-ended item is helpful because we asked them what were the additional elements that they used that we did not include. So that's what these numbers mean, and I think these numbers also show up in your poll. So I specifically want to talk about the first three. You're probably already familiar with the Moore's interaction framework, right? The learner, instructor, and learner content. And interestingly, what we found was actually the first and the third is both on student. What we found is Doris and I actually have done studies on engagement. If you're interested in really looking at engagement strategies, and we use the interaction framework to build these strategies. And we found, and I've also seen in other research, students value learner-instructor interaction more than learner, at least grad students do. Probably undergrads value learner, but then grad students definitely value learner to instructor interaction. So we came up with a number of strategies how you can enhance that. And there's also this whole other thing. I don't know if you've thought, we see the term interaction, we see the term communication, and there's this whole literature on presence. And then we see communication, and then we see engagement. So where does this all fit? Right? We went with interaction and communication in this rubric. That's what we went, even though we've done other studies on engagement. So in another systematic review that I did, so this article is in Computer Ed if you want to pull it up, we found a lot of studies on engagement. So what we did was we analyzed the subcategories, and we found that interaction, communication, we framed it such that they are all to support engagement. So that is kind of the framework that we built. If you want to see, how we structured it. So here are some practical strategies on how to enhance, interaction. So for learner, if you're designing, how can you do this, right? So setting up the student lounge, even though students may or may not take the time to talk, but creating a separate lounge for them to interact. Informal, so this is not a formal discussion board that you're creating. This is not graded, but you're giving them the opportunity to chat. Icebreaker introduction discussion, setting that up is very helpful for learner because you want them to get to know each other, right? So giving them that opportunity is helpful. Peer moderation enhances learner, so assigning them as moderators. And it also helps with the faculty workload, especially if you think, they have the background and knowledge to lead that discussion, then, you should still be there as an instructor, but then it benefits them. They're taking on responsibility, and there's learner-learner interaction. Peer review for projects, so that's again another learner-learner interaction there. And finally, if you're doing synchronous sessions, maybe breakout discussions, for them to talk among themselves, enhances learner-learner. I'm just giving you a few strategies to, take with. So when you're designing, how do you give opportunities for learner-learner interaction? Learner-instructor, again, in synchronous sessions, like, we've been doing polls today, we've been doing some chats. I know there's a conversation going on, and thanks to those of you who are already sharing articles. So, there is a learner as well as some learner-instructor interaction going on, right? If you're doing synchronous sessions using polls, emoticons, all that is very helpful. If you're in discussions, asynchronous discussions, especially interacting with students, referring to them by their name, it promotes engagement and gets their attention. So intentionally, the instructor, you don't want to be the only person doing all of it, because you're going to get burnt, and the instructor might get burnt. But then you want the instructor's presence should be there, right? It supports the interaction. Sending regular announcements is helpful. I follow the policy of I email every Monday morning. So even if it's a holiday, they get a timed announcement, so that students can, they know what's coming that week. Like I call it as a to-do email. So having some kind of format where they know that, okay, my instructor is here, I will hear from the instructor, that's very important. And then giving students an opportunity to contact. We already talked about this in the overview also. It enhances learner-instructor interaction. Office hours, giving opportunities for reflection via journals, surveys, all that also enhances interaction. And also feedback. This is a tough one, right? Grading and feedback, I think, is hard in an online course, but then very important. And for you to give feedback using different modalities, all that supports learner-instructor interaction. Learner content, I'm keeping track of time. Okay. So presenting content in a variety of formats, which Doris already talked about. So I'll just give you a minute to quickly look at this. I don't want to go through all of them for the sake of time. Inviting guest speakers is another great way, right? Involving the students to generate their content. We saw that, right? Them creating the artifacts. So those all enhance learner content interaction. So I am going to stop there. I would say that interaction and communication is very important. Otherwise, students are not going to be engaged, which means, we don't know whether they will be successful in the online course. With that, I'm going to pass it on.
And that was the perfect lead-in to assessment and evaluation. Thank you, Florence. Once again, we have a poll. If you could please take a moment to, complete it so that we have an idea of what you have encountered or what you actually use in your practice. Okay, answers are slowly coming in. We'll give it another minute or so. We have about 75%. Let's start having a look at some of these. Again, I really like looking at the high and low ones. Assignments that align with learning objectives. I think there has to be alignment throughout course design, learning objectives, activities, assignments that really help the learner to gain the skills and the knowledge that we want them to learn. Otherwise, why are we doing this? Let's see. Many times, actually, as a student, I have not, especially in undergrad, I did not encounter a whole lot of formative feedback. And I think it's super important in learning. That's just a personal, I guess, pet peeve of mine. we all make mistakes, and sometimes we make, we fall on our noses more than we actually succeed in life. But failure is wonderful in order to obtain successes later on. And so if we don't give students a chance to improve their work, then I'm not really sure if we're being very effective as instructors. And so building steps, scaffolding, having them submit, for example, if you have like a research paper due, submitting a topic, getting that approved, making sure it aligns with the course objectives. Then perhaps step 2 would be submitting references, peer-reviewed article references, to journal references, to make sure that they're indeed using refereed journals, if that's what you want them to do. And then maybe an outline, and then at the very end, perhaps the actual paper. But making sure that you guide the student gaining the skills and knowledge that I talked about, what is all about the course, the meat and potatoes. Let's see here. Let's see, rubrics. Yes, that actually took me a long time to get to rubrics. It's a lot of work. But once you have them, you can consistently use them, and you can share them with students. In fact, I would suggest that you share them with your students so that they know again what is expected of them. What do I want to see in this paper? Making sure that they're including all of the details, all of the categories, if they have to synthesize information and things like that. Let's see, the lower ones here are self-assessment. That's what we also saw when we were working on our research project. It's sometimes hard to do. In undergraduate education, a lot of instructors use multiple choice quizzes, which I'm not another fan of. But you can, if that's what you do, then you can provide little self quizzes with other questions to make sure that they're on target and that they're on track. And it's actually also a very good strategy for reducing your workload. Once you have them created. Some textbook publishers, they give you assessments that you can integrate so you don't have to create the questions. I don't know, many years ago, they weren't all that, from my perspective, they weren't all that good. I hope they have improved, because once again, I don't use a lot of multiple choice. I use a lot of, speaking for Dr. Florence already says, our students in instructional design and technology work on a lot of projects. And I think actually that is a wonderful way to learn for both as a student as you are the instructor. Assessments occurring throughout the course. During my undergraduate years, I saw a lot of assessments and assignments being due at the end of the semester, and you get utterly swarmed, especially if you take 5 courses and all of the instructors are doing the same thing. So it is really nice to space things out throughout, putting in self-assessments or formative feedback and things like that, breaking things down, scaffolding. Let's see. Are there any questions from the audience about any of these at the moment? Some things that you worry that you can't remember when we get to the end? Something that is immediate? No, I don't see anything. Okay, let's look. Is there anything that I should add by looking at these here? Rubrics, opportunities. Yeah, opportunities for students to give actually feedback about the course content or the facilitation of the instructor or the instructor is doing. I used to have like a midpoint course evaluation, and it consisted of three open-ended questions. What do you really like about the course? What do you not like about the course? And do you have any recommendations for improvement? So that way, halfway, if you are in a semester-based environment, you're halfway through the semester and you can still make changes to whatever is going on, versus having students filling out course evaluations at the end of the semester. They don't benefit from that. The next group who will come through the course might benefit through it, but actually they don't. And so I think it is important, especially if you subscribe to student-centered learning and teaching, that you actually get like kind of sort of idea what's going on. And if it's anonymous, it's a really good way to get a feeling of the temperature in the class, so to speak. Okay, and with that, I will turn it back over to Dr.
Thank you. I was just taking a peek at the discussion. You guys are doing great sharing resources. Kiran, it looks like you already recruited Murat to moderate. He's doing a great job. Thank you, Murat. And also all the tools you're sharing, those are all really helpful, right? I don't really use an app like GroupMe or Remind or WhatsApp, not with my students, but I know that some instructors do. So especially I know in the Asian context, I know WhatsApp is very popular because I think they all sometimes have access to internet on the phone more quickly than, you know, on another device. I've seen that. So whatever works best, you know, to stay in connect with the students, and sometimes with the instructor, sometimes without the instructor too, right? Groups for them to have that engagement. So okay, almost we are in the wrap-up mode. So this is learner support, which was the last item. So here is the last poll for you guys. So we had 5 polls. This is the last one. Okay, we have 84%. Okay, maybe we'll stop there since it isn't moving. Okay, 87. Okay, that's good. Okay, so let's take a quick look. What do we see as the highest? Course navigation. I think, you know, a lot of the LMSs these days come with really standard navigation, right? So I think that helps with that. But then still, you still have to internal navigation for pages and things like that, you still have to put an effort. I love how Canvas has those modules. So, you know, there's only so many ways those can be created or linked. So that helps for those of you in different LMSs. I'm sure all of them have. I know Moodle gives you the most flexibility, I think. And then a consistent course structure came next, 86%. I think this is also very, very important. Week by week, if it's like done very differently, I mean, it takes extra effort on the student's end, right? And then we might lose them. So those two came the highest, and then 79 minimum technology requirements. Yeah, I think even though sometimes we think it's a given, but explaining like what is needed might be helpful early on, so students know that they have this for them to be successful. I've got an email if the student can complete a course on a cell phone. So, you know, so things like that, you need to clarify. Of course, it's hard. You cannot, right? Not on the small size screen. And so explaining the minimum technology requirements is very important. Resources for accessing technology, whatever they need. We cannot expect all of them to have all the skills. And that's where I think the readiness survey also helps. Minimum readiness, and especially if they're new to that particular LMS or synchronous tools, whatever resources you want to share is helpful. So those two were in 79 and 75. And then also easily viewable media. We want to be sharing things for students in a way that they can easily access it, right? And so even for us to test it across different platforms and different devices might be helpful, because in one it might look perfect, in another it may not. I missed 82. 82 was 80, institutional support services. Very important, because as an instructor, you may not be able to give them all the support, but a lot of these days institutions have resources, so giving them that information is very, very helpful. And the last one was the 61 media files accessible on different platforms and devices, which I mentioned. And as an instructor, it's hard for us, or even instructional designers, like how many can you check to create and make sure it works everywhere? So do your best. That's what I would say. And then, there might still be like a browser that doesn't work. I'm seeing less issues these days compared to before. Hopefully they're all becoming more compatible and, not too many major differences. So those are on learner support. The students do need our support, right? So these are a few things that we can do from our end to provide a support. And I just brought a couple of screenshots to share as examples. So this is for those of you who are on Canvas might recognize. So I have a consistent module structure. So I have like an overview page or a landing page for each module. So then, there is the description and then the objectives, the tasks, readings and resources, and activities and assessments. So something like so this repeats every week, they see this. And then e-lesson is my short recording, instructor generated lesson. And then a discussion, or there is an assignment, a project, whatever comes will come later. So I just wanted to show you the example of my landing page. So having that consistent structure, I think really helps students week by week. They don't get lost. So this is kind of the last topic on OCDE, but we have 3 other topics quickly to wrap up. So one thing I want to tell you before we even go into that, if there's one thing I can leave, instructional alignment is very important. So I think the one that Doris talked about an assessment, it came up, alignment between objectives and assessments. You want alignment from goals to objectives to materials to activities to assessment, right? Clearly, you want to be able to see that. And I think that's where creating a course map, working for instructional designers, if you're designing courses, working with instructors, that course map really helps for the students to see the big picture and see the alignment. So that is something I want to mention. So I am going to pass it on.
Right, we are done with the polls. Instructor preparation and support. What support strategies assist instructors in online course design? What do you think? If you want to put some of your answers in the chat, that would be wonderful. I know we have a lot of people with a lot of experience in here. It says here, Connect Yard is becoming popular in South Africa. WhatsApp is also very popular, like Dr. Florence mentioned, in Asian countries. So these are technology tools that support communication and interaction. Templates for page design, very true, because it all looks at, you don't want every unit or every week to look utterly different. It really tempers with cognitive load of students, and it's just why make them work harder? Let's see, templates. Faculty learning communities, yes, indeed. I mentioned at the very beginning, when you're an online instructor and you kind of sort of on your own, if you don't have a whole lot of support, is a very steep learning curve. And your courses can really, use peer mentoring, some of the things that you put in here. PowerPoint presentations, making them a little bit more engaging, because I'm sure you all have heard the term death by PowerPoint. We love to lecture and use PowerPoints at conferences and when we teach. Canvas Sandbox, I am not familiar with that, so maybe Florence can jump in there in a little bit, because she uses Canvas. I currently use Blackboard. I have used Canvas, but it's been 15 years, so I'm pretty. No, wait, that was desire to learn. I've used all of them at some point in time, but currently in the last 2 institutions I have served, I used Blackboard. Let's see what else is here. Staff developers, most certainly helpful. The more you can build relationships and collaborate with individuals, the more fun it actually becomes. professional conferences, using training and things like that. So, okay. Thank you very much for your answers. And you will see some of those reflected in this framework that Dr. Florence created with some of her colleagues. You have administration support that is utmost. If your support doesn't come from the top, I mean, then you are lost and lonely. And so it's super helpful. Personal support, pedagogical support, and technical support. And just give you some quick examples here, because I know we want to be aware of time. The administration can really help to give instructors preparation time to design these courses, reduce class sizes, perhaps, especially in the online learning environment, or, and when you are at the graduate level, you don't want 250 students in your class. Teaching load reductions for developing time, recognition of, quality or exceptional courses of strategies, or, quality of teaching, and some incentives. I have seen that. Personnel support is something like instructional designers, of course, librarians, distance education centers at some universities or institutions. Mentoring, peer mentoring is a wonderful thing if you have a chance to get into that. Not only to be a mentor, but also to be a mentee. It usually goes both ways because it's once again a relationship. Instructional technology services, and also ICT services, technicians that help you with help desks and things like that. Graphic designers, multimedia development, and things like that. Pedagogical support, some of the things that were addressed there is, of course, training, internal as well as external. So you have webinars or workshops, or you can externally, there are also badges and certificates nowadays that some of the organizations offer, or you can take a graduate level class at your institution or at other institutions. One-on-one consultations with instructional designers or support staff, extremely valuable. And then you have technology support. So you have the help desk that I already mentioned, and hardware and software, because we need that in order to create content or interactions and things like that, all of the things we already talked about. So you have like cameras, just some simple things like headsets and microphones and things like that. And with the software, some of the development tools that I already mentioned that are, free of charge. And most universities or institutions nowadays have, luckily, an online learning platform. All right, let's move on. Florence, if you want to talk about the next section.
Thank you, Doris. Actually, before we move on, so this article also, if you want to pull up, it's in that Distance Learning Administration Journal, OJ Online, and Kiran is part of this article too. So for those of you who wonder why Kiran is part of all these studies, she's my brilliant and talented doctoral student who's also an is on the Center for Teaching and Learning team at UNC Charlotte. So this study was interesting because we did a cross-cultural comparison between the US instructors and German instructors. And then we said, okay, let's write this up. And so we didn't have a whole lot of data, but then whatever we had, we wrote it. But still, this framework was still neat to put together to see what instructors said they wanted. In terms of support. So for those of you who work with instructors, just seeing the various aspects that you could support them on, I think is very helpful. And I think it's also in the references list. Okay, so half of you are instructional designers. You have more insight on this than me. I was an instructional designer 15 years ago. So, but I do work with instructional designers and we prepare instructional designers. So this last section is on the role of instructional designers. We know that we have a lot of instructional designers in the US, but this is still universally, it's still not as common. Matter of fact, I did a presentation was it last week, to an Indian university. And I asked the faculty, do you all know what instructional design is? And they said, no, very few knew. So we still have a whole lot of work to do, right? Globally, I think the instructional design research has to reach, and the importance has to be reached. And also, hopefully folks will see the value of instructional designers. I think COVID has shown the importance how much, instructional designers can help. And a lot of universities are hiring more IDs. So IDs play a very important role in online course design. That's the point I want to make. So they have different titles, right? Facilitators, consultants, managers, designers. And they work collaboratively with instructors a lot of times, right? A lot of times, because instructors are not prepared with the design skills. They're usually subject matter experts a lot of time. So having that collaborative approach to design is really helpful. And because IDs are trained in the systematic approach to design, whereas instructors are usually not. So this study was interesting. It was an integrated review by Chen and Carolina. And so they talked about how IDs use models and quality standard tools like rubrics to guide instructors in the design of courses. And for instructional designers, connecting with the instructor is very important. I think that's the biggest challenge, right? Building that trust and getting them to buy into what you have to share, building that relationship. And that came from the Richardson article. So a lot of important skills are needed to be, a collaborative and effective ID. Listening skills, being flexible, aware of cultural differences. So those are some points, but I would love to hear from you all. Those of you who are IDs especially, right? What else? How else do IDs support instructors? What is the role of IDs? I'd love to hear. Okay. Do you all do anything else other than what's on the slide? Let me ask it like that. I'm not seeing any messages. How else, like, what do you see as your role in online course design? Have you done anything else? Okay, all of this, okay. Guide faculty to understand the intentionality of the discussion they make, okay. Friendly critics, I like that term, Kiran. Emotional support. Definitely. Especially for those who are new to online teaching, it's a lot, right? And I'm sure you all have carried heavy loads, especially during the COVID times. Oh, how of learning and what of learning? Okay. Like that. Counselors. Okay. Organize an annual faculty award. Okay, that's neat. Okay. Yeah, so you can see, so IDs, definitely we need more IDs, and IDs play an active role in the design of online courses, right? So we thought we'll include that. So thank you, for all of you are sharing. Contact that new hires have. Yeah, they all come to your trainings, right? Even before they start teaching. I am an instructional technologist. I've been an instructional designer. I hung out my first week at the Center for Teaching and Learning when I came to this institution, because that is the place you learn all the new tools, everything that is used. So that's your first place you want to be, to learn everything. So yeah, these are all excellent comments. They also research with faculty. Excellent. Yeah, I hope to see more of that, because IDs are busy. I see that too. I think research capacity is very, very important. I'm hoping, for more collaboration on that. Okay, so here is the last slide on recommendations, and Doris is going to wrap us up.
All right, so we talked a lot, and I'm sure this is a lot to take in. And so that's why we thought, well, let's just hit the key points that we made. I don't need to read all of these to you, But we mentioned how super important it is to collaborate with instructional designers, especially when you are a first-time new online instructor, utterly overwhelming task, especially if you have to develop the course yourself. Sometimes when you're new at an institution, you get handed a course and you can, make changes. And sometimes you cannot. Sometimes you get handed a course shell and all you are allowed is, add announcements or discussions. So it depends totally on the context. So I think that is important to mention here. But, include all of the different elements that we talked about. See if you can find a peer mentor to help you through it. Collaborate with, not just instructional designers, but support staff in general. We mentioned a lot of them. I mean, I have worked with instructional designers, people that, did actually infrastructure support and stuff like that on workshops. It's a wonderful opportunity. I had great experiences working and collaborating with others. Again, like I mentioned, it's all about the connection and the relationships, and it actually makes it a lot more fun. So you can read some of these yourself here in the interest of time. I want to make sure that we, have a little bit of time to answer some questions. And if you have any questions about our recommendations here, feel free to jump in the chat. Thank you, everyone.
And here are the references, so you'll have that. Yeah, we have about 5 minutes. We might be able to take 1 or 2 questions, but you also have our email. So if you want to get in touch with us, we'll be glad to respond. I'll show you it's on the last slide.
Dr. Florence and Dr. Doris, early on when you talk about the especially when Dr. Florence showed the example, the screenshot from your course about module 0, I think there was somewhere over there that you give your students online student readiness survey. So there was an earlier question if you could share any the online readiness survey. I know Murat shared something from an OLJ or online learning paper, but perhaps you can also share, what you're using.
Yeah, good point, Pauline. Actually, there's a lot of surveys out there, especially institutions have been creating surveys. Only thing is, a lot of time they're not all research based. So it's very more practice based, and then based on student responses, it's built in such a way that there is some feedback to it. I have worked on a readiness instrument. Of course, I have to tell you about that. So that's in OLJ too. So if anybody wants to pull it up and put it in, I think it's called Student Readiness for Online Learning. So Kiran and I did one on faculty readiness for teaching online, but then this is a student readiness for online learning. So again, we also did identified several other instruments also in that thing, very practical. And, I have not taken the time to create like a web application out of it. Then, somebody could just take it and link it. I've not done that, but then this is an article. But there's a lot out there. I think Penn State has a good one. Chapel Hill used to have a good one that I used to use, and then that server disappeared. So that's what happens when you rely on somebody. You have to keep checking the link. Okay. Anything else? Any other questions? I know it's time. You all have to leave. I hope, there's something at least new. A lot of this information might be just a reinforcement, but I hope you learned 1 or 2 new strategies that you can take away and implement either as an instructional designer, instructor, student, whatever capacity.
There are no major questions at the moment, Dr. Florence. Everyone is thanking you and Doris for such a great job in hosting this. On behalf of GSA, we thank you as well. And everyone else, we thank you for coming today.
And we thought we'll finish in an hour.
Thank you, everyone.
That's great.
I really appreciate the invitation and the facilitation of our 2 wonderful ladies here, Pauline and Kiran, and of course to Dr. Florence, who I really enjoy working with. So it's been a joy. Thank you.
Thank you so much.